Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And we're delving back into Xanathar's Guide to Everything. We're going to be looking at subclasses for Cleric.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
As always, in the description below, you can find a link to get your copy of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And we are doing subclasses again, and we are on Cleric. We have 2 new domains to delve into, and there's some other stuff, as with all of the subclasses so far, to help you flesh out and define your character a bit more.
Your cleric, if you will. So you get your temple, you get your keepsake, you get a secret. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, so you get 3 tables to roll on, and the temple is basically where you learned, obviously. Keepsakes is something you may carry with you, having to do with your religion, and the secret is just that, it's a secret. You may not want your friends to know about this one, and right off the very first one, an imp offers you counsel. You try to ignore the creature, but sometimes its advice is helpful. Like, that could be, something definitely going on, and if my player had that and the imp was showing up from time to time, I may even offer him as a familiar at some point.
Right.
So there's definitely some fun things that you can pull from these tables to develop stories from, and build out your world and your campaign just based off of some of the choices that maybe one of your players has made in the game.
And we turn to the next page and we get a cool little sidebar, serving a pantheon, philosophy, or force. So if you were, not I'm a cleric of a single deity, I want to do something else, here's how you handle it.
It basically goes into how do you want a cleric? Here are your options.
So then we move into the Forge domain, and we did get this initially as part of the Unearthed Arcana. If you look at just the Cleric Divine domains, that's where it originally showed up as. We got Forge, we got Grave, and we got Protection, and in the book we're only getting 2 of those.
Forge domain features. At first level, you get domain spells, bonus proficiencies, blessing of the forge. Second level, you get your channel divinity, and that's your artisan's blessings. 6th level goes soul of the forge. 8th level and 14th level, they actually double up and double down on divine strike. You know what? It made that more palatable for me somehow. I don't know why. And 17th level, you have Saint of Forge and Fire.
Nice. So going to the spells. There's a slight modification. They kind of doubled down on the magic item aspect of it during the description so that they could replace shield with identify. It's a bit weird seeing shield on a cleric list, so I don't know how I feel so much about the switch, but it's not a problem for me.
Yeah, so a small change. I guess I would rather have the shield spell, but identify does make sense.
It makes sense. I think shield is a potent spell, and to give it to the cleric, who probably is going to be wearing the heavier armor, is going to be in the thick of battle, I think it's going to be far more of a challenge for the DM if he's got that.
And he always has access to it because it's a domain spell, so he can always just, if he's got the slots to use, choose to use it. Now, the same thing goes for Identify, which is nice because that's a ritual spell, and it's on his spell, and it's a spell known for him. So he's going to always be able to identify. So, in combat, sure, shield is the way to go, but I think for the flavor of this guy, Identify works great.
I agree.
Forge domains, as we said, there's a slight change up with the shield and Identify, but then, 3rd level, it's heat metal, magic weapon. 5th level, elemental weapon, protection from energy. 7th level, fabricate wall of fire. 9th level, animate object, and creation. So they're really double down on the energy types and doing stuff with your weapons. So I mean, it's fitting. It's part of the Forge theme. I guess we're building things.
It's Forge, it's fire, it's creation. All of the things make sense there.
So with that, then we go on to bonus proficiencies.
So you normally, in the Unearthed Arcana, you got heavy armor. Now you're getting the heavy armor and smith tools. So let's face it, if you're going to be a cleric of the forge, you got to be able to know how to make stuff. So if you weren't getting it from your race or your background, standard cleric certainly isn't giving it to you. So they need to make sure you have it. So, bam, got it.
And also, the cleric doesn't get that many proficiencies anyway, skill and tool proficiencies. So this pads it out a little bit. So it's nice. I like it.
So Blessing of the Forge, you gain the ability to imbue magic into a weapon or armor. You know, it's just you for the course of the day or until you die, you can imbue an item, be it armor or be it weapon. It adds that magic +1 to it, and bam, armor class, weapon damage, and attack rolls.
And this one is almost exactly the same, but not quite. They changed the phrasing a little bit to include, short rest or long rest. You can use it, and it goes away after that, or if you die.
Yes.
That part wasn't in there before. So before, I guess technically your body could scavenge your body and have a magic item for the day.
Technically, yes, that could work. So we go on to Channel Divinity, the Artisan's Blessing. You have the ability to gather your components together over the course of an hour, and bam, you do a ritual, and it makes the item for you. It can duplicate items. So if you've got an exact key that you want to make, you can do it. Stipulation is, the thing can have a cost of no more than 100 gold pieces, but you don't actually have to do the work yourself. You just have to
supply the value to create the item. This is another one. This one is pretty much the same, except for there were some things that appeared with better definitions, like the exact time it takes is before it was just during a short rest.
Yes.
And also where it appears before just appear. Now it's like specifically within 5 foot of you.
Yeah.
Small changes. I just wonder what kind of abuses happened that people had to write in with their with the
feedback.
The feedback, the surveys. That we're like, all right, we need to say 5 feet and we need to put in an exact time.
Part of me would love to see, the more interesting feedback or surveys that they've gotten on the Unearthed Arcanas. What kind of stories?
You mean batshit crazy, right? You want to hear the batshit crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You're just being very PC and nice.
Indeed. So we move on to 6th level. The Mastery of the Forge grants you special abilities, fire resistance, and you get a +1 to armor class while wearing heavy armor. Not too bad. They did remove an ability from this. You used to do force damage to constructs whenever you attack them with a melee weapon. They stripped that out.
Yeah, so I mean it's still decent. Soul of the Forge is not bad. Divine Smite is something you get at 8th level and 14th level, basically, and it's Divine Smite like everybody else gets. You do an extra die 8 of fire damage, and then they double down on it. Now, with these guys, it actually makes a little bit of sense that you can summon the Fire of the Forge to your weapon. So I don't mind it so much, and I kind of really like the fact that they doubled down on it again.
Mm-hmm. It's for this character. I see this as someone who's going to be going into melee, so it's not a problem. But the constant, 8th level is always that, we're going to double down on melee weapons or cantrips. I want something different. I want to go in a new direction.
Too bad. You're going to be unhappy on the next domain.
Oh, I know.
So we have Saint of Forge and Fire at 17th level. Your affinity with fire and metal becomes more powerful. You gain immunity to fire damage. While wearing heavy armor, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage from non-magical attacks. And I know how you feel about that one, Ted. And this one is exactly the same.
Yeah, it's cut and dry from the Unearthed Arcana. And, all right, 17th level, you can really be a badass in combat against things that don't have magic to hit you. Okay, there's ways that you can exploit that. You walk through town and, the people really just can't hurt you all that much. But, give it DR. I know DR doesn't really exist in this, but, then it'd be awesome because then it's okay, well, if they roll low enough damage, it just doesn't hurt at all as opposed to always taking something.
Right, or if they just happen to have a magic weapon, or they are considered a magic weapon, which a lot of creatures do get, then it's not as useful. But I mean, we've come lamented on that in other videos as well.
Many actually.
And we keep threatening to actually use the search features from D&D Beyond to figure out how many creatures really can still harm you.
Right. All right. So we move on to the Grave Domain, and this is one of those weird ones that they use the term grave, they use necrotic in a couple different places, but honestly, you're against undead, and you're trying to still the spirits and rest the bodies so that there is no undead.
Well, maybe in the spells, but for the most part, yeah, only in the spells are you dealing with any real necrotic energy. That was one of the things they actually got stripped
Yeah,
out from the UA version.
That's true.
So that being said, I believe the spell list is exactly the same, and it's first level Bane and False Life, third level General Pose, Ray of Enfeeblement. There's some necrotic energy there. Fifth level Revivify and Vampiric Touch, again some necrotic energy there. Seventh level we see it again with Blight, Death Ward. Then we have at ninth level Anti-Life Shell and Raise Dead. So they don't actually get anything having to do directly with undead, and I can see the way they're using these, that it is still more the power over life than it is the power over death.
Correct. So bonus proficiencies, they actually stripped out the heavy armor from the UA, and I actually missed it on my first pass through. Dave's like, what about that? And I'm like, oh, crud.
Yeah, it's kind of a big one. It makes sense. Like, I don't think everyone needs to wear heavy armor, when they don't know something to do. They did give them something interesting in its place. It's not as good, but I like it better.
The Circle of Mortality?
The Circle of Mortality, they made a slight change. So what that is basically, you can restore something to basically max healing when you heal something that has 0 hit points or less. Well, I guess there is no less. But when something has 0 hit points and you cast a healing spell, it's basically maximized on them. And they get, the maximum you could get. Which I'm like, if that was the only ability to get at first level, that would be pretty weak. I mean, it's useful, but how often is it going to come up?
That's true.
So, but in addition to that, you get the Spare the Dying cantrip. I like any time that you get more cantrips. Is that an amazing cantrip? It's okay, but it also opens you up, so now you can take something else that you might want more. It makes it more useful. You have it. But it does get better because you get to do it as a bonus action instead of an action.
And it's a range of 30 feet.
And it's a range of 30 feet. So I think those combined things make it really cool. And it's also really flavorful for this kind of cleric where you're like, no, the grave is not for you yet. And, from 30 feet away, you just stabilize them. As an added thought, because it's just a bonus action.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty awesome ability. I have a character that I played in previous editions that this would absolutely be the domain for, and yeah, so reading this is like, oh, what would Tull do with that, or what would Tull do with this?
So on this ability, there's one slight change, but it's an important one from the UA, and that's giving your bonus cantrip Spare the Dying a range of 30 feet. Before it was still you had to touch them.
Yes.
So now, you don't have to get into the mix of things, or if you are in the mix of things, you don't have to leave. You can be like, throw it over your shoulder and be like, boom, you're good. Holy hand grenade, bang.
So you also at first level, you get Eyes of the Grave. You gain the ability to occasionally sense the presence of undead around you. It's really weird because you can use your magical senses to see any undead that's within 60 feet of you as an action, but if you can't actually see them because they're behind total cover.
Yeah, well, it's cover, but concealment is not cover.
It's true. Total cover blocks it, and it's just kind of weird. And there's a lot of changes between this one and what was in the UA. It initially was, you could do it for a minute, but it was out to a mile. It was like, whoa, this is a bit weird.
Well, it actually took longer to do. I think it took.
It was a minute.
It took a minute to do it. That was a casting time. Like, you had to spend a minute doing it instead of an action doing it. And you could only do it once. It was really far out for a mile. You got more information. Now it's like, oh, are there any invisible undead in this room with me, or hidden undead? Yeah. I mean, I guess it's useful. Like, you got, a bunch of sarcophagi, and they're open. And you can use this ability and go, oh, they're actually really mummies. Or, oh, there's a vampire invisible in this room with me somewhere, I mean, you wouldn't know it was a vampire. You would just know it was undead.
I go to a party. Is anybody here undead? Okay, there is. Damn it.
I don't know who. Yeah, so some changes there. And also you get to use it more often because it's your a minimum of once, but, it's your wisdom modifier per long rest.
Right.
It's also a change of mechanics that we're seeing as well.
So we go on to your Channel Divinity Path to the Grave. As an action, you can choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of you, cursing it until the end of your next turn. The next time you or an ally of yours hits the cursed creature with an attack, the creature has vulnerability to all of that attack's damage, and then the curse ends. And this one it used to be a touch, so you had to be within melee range of them instead of the being at 30 feet. And they also used to lose any resistance or immunity to the damage type that you're offering. So,
Well, I didn't take it that way. I took it as they just explained it better. Like what would happen if they already had those. So it could be one or the other. I'm not entirely sure if because we've talked about this in other videos as well. Is what happens if you give something vulnerability and it has immunity or resistance. So it defined that specifically in the UA. Here it doesn't actually say what happens.
So I would take it as is, like, okay, well, I have resistance and I gain vulnerability, so I would treat it as, okay, it's normal for me. If I've got immunity and I gain vulnerability, I've got immunity, so I'm good.
Right, and I would do it differently. I would be like, you've got immunity, now you have resistance. So.
It's the DM's take. I think the UA, in my opinion, actually explained it better.
There was no question of what happened.
Yeah.
So that part was actually better in the UA. Maybe not necessarily because it was stronger or the ability was better, but because of the way it was defined.
Right. But that's that. So we move on to Sentinel at Death's Door. 6th level, you gain the ability to impede Death's progress. As a reaction, when you or a creature you can see within 30 feet of you suffers a critical hit, you can turn that into a normal hit. Any effects triggered by the critical hit are then canceled. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum once. You regain them after a long rest. It's pretty much the same thing as what's there. I think it's an awesome ability that you're just like, all right, yeah, reaction. I'm just gonna not.
It got slightly better because you get to use it more often now. Mm-hmm. In the UA, it was once per short or long rest. Now it's your Wisdom modifier per long rest. So depending on how many short rests you take, I think more than likely though, if you're a cleric, you're gonna have a high Wisdom. It means you're probably going to have at least a 2 or a 3. So you're either going to break even with your short rest mechanic or be better.
Right.
And at the higher levels, you're probably definitely going to be better.
Absolutely. So I think it's a fantastic feature. 8th level, we get Potent Spellcasting, which is the one that you add your Wisdom modifier to Cleric cantrips.
Previously, that was basically
the Divine Strike.
No. Previously, it was basically Sacred Flame. That was it. That was the only cantrip. I think they might have added some more in here.
Oh, I haven't gotten to the spells part of the cleric cantrips, but I'll have to look and see. But so far, I'm not impressed with the 8th level abilities. In the UA, they had Divine Strike, which they were doing necrotic damage with their melee attacks. As I've said many times, 8th level cleric abilities I'm not impressed with.
They're not very interesting.
Toll the Dead and
Word of Radiance as cantrip. So I don't know if they would actually be.
Well, Word of Radiance sounds like it says it's an evocations spell. So I'm gonna guess that's a radiant damaging thing.
That might actually be have some combat aptitude to it.
All right, so while he's looking that up, the last ability is Keeper of Souls. Starting in 17th level, you can seize the trace of vitality from parting a soul and use it to heal the living. When an enemy you can see dies within 60 feet of you, you or one creature of your choice that is within 60 feet of you regains hit points equal to the enemy's number of hit dice. You can use this feature only if you aren't incapacitated. Once you use it, you can't do so until the start of your next turn. So I think this is an ability that, has the potential for being exploited after combat. It's like, all right, I coup de grace that guy. Next turn, I coup de grace that guy.
As healing?
As healing. It's like, oh, we don't need short rests anymore. We just slit the creature's throats after the battle's over, and we just start
the way healing works in 5e, I think it's a moot point anyway. Unless you're going to have battles right afterwards.
That's true.
And you're like 17th level when you're getting that anyway?
But, I mean, some of the things you could be fighting might have, a decent number of hit dice. Range used to be 30 feet, now it's 60. So it's gotten more potent. It's gotten better. So
I totally missed that part, but everything else was the same, right?
yeah. So word of radiance, radiant damage.
And Toll Dead are both attack cantrips for the cleric. Potent cantrip is no longer useless. You have several choices now.
All right, we got 3.
Yeah. Well, how many attack cantrips are you going to really take anyway?
That's true.
But I believe every single one of them is
Save or suck.
Save or suck. Yeah.
Well, it is what it is, but having the option of having something other than Sacred Flame is nice to choose from. That's that. Those are the ones that we get. We don't get to see what happens with protection, so maybe that'll come later, or maybe that won't come at all. We won't know. But as we typically do, we with this one as per request, let's talk about how we would use Grave and Forge as villains.
Grave is going to be easy. For all you necromancy boys out there, I got something for you.
All right, so you seem interested in this one, so we want to hold that off, or
we can start with Forge. We'll start with Forge.
All right, so Forge, it's about magic items, it's about creations. So what if you had, let's face it, you talk about the Forge. To me, I want to go dwarves. So you can either talk about normal dwarf or let's go dark dwarf, and his obsession with making stuff and magic items is he's on a quest. He wants them all. So he's out there and he's hunting down adventuring parties with his cadre of anti-heroes to bring the magic items all into his group's possession.
Sure, you could do it that way, but wouldn't it be much easier if they all just came to you? And if you build a dungeon filled with horrible traps, and then spent instead of sending that cadre out to hunt them, to spread rumors of all the all the things that are in this wonderful place, and it's just basically murder world or a death trap, and he can be the big bad at the end.
That is pretty cool. I like that a lot.
So my thoughts were also Mad Tinker Gnome. And basically, sometimes you build a thing, but you never stop to ask if you should. So you could go in several ways, like Doomsday Device, crazy giant, like kaiju-sized construct, and then like it could be like a 2-part quest, like where, like you've got to track him down and find him and convince him to help you undo the thing that he did.
That is awesome.
And then go undo it.
That I like that a lot.
So, and there's like a couple different takes you could take on that as well. So I think the Forge one is actually could be kind of fun. And then Grave, like, come on, man, I want to hunt all you guys down. I want to play necromancers and say it's okay to raise and animate dead, and create undead. This guy is for you. He's coming for you. He doesn't like what you're doing. He's going to stop it.
So he doesn't pull any punches. He doesn't hold back. He's out not for blood, but the things that don't bleed.
Well, yeah, and those that are making the things that don't bleed. It's his sacred duty to see that the gods of the dead get their due. And you've been keeping them from them. So, and it even says in there, the undead are your enemies.
Right.
So yeah, that's how I would definitely use that. And he's probably got a couple paladin buddies.
Oh, of course. So you could have this, twisted. You could have someone who started off, being this lawful good undead slayer, and he's wielding all this necrotic energy, and he might still have a hatred and a passion, or a hatred and a passion to kill undead, but because he's been dealing and fighting against so many dark forces, he himself has been twisted and turned from his initial purpose, and he's seeing things that are undead that aren't really. So he's out on this I'm going to kill everything streak because he can't tell the difference.
Here's a twist on that. The only way to have undead is to have living. So you have to destroy all the living things and obliterate those things, so there can be no more undead.
That's a big twist.
Or you could be a little more insidious, like maybe he's poisoning wells so that, not to kill anybody, right? But to make them infertile, so that he's sterilizing village after village, no children are being born, and it becomes more like a mystery.
Yeah, wow, that's you're good with the dark twist, my friend.
So I think it might be interesting, it might be fun. Be like, how do we stop undead from happening? I know we stop people from being born.
That is a way to go.
So
So, what do you guys think? Do you have any feedback on the cleric domains? Any feedback on the dark villains that we've created? Got any of your own you want to share? It's a great place to talk about it, and that's down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
you can check out that description and get the link to get your own copy of Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.